All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have Micah Mortali. His website's easy enough, micahmortali.com. He's the author of Rewilding. And yeah, Micah, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Yes, I wrote a book called Rewilding back in came out in 2019. Sounds true. And I live in Massachusetts, United States of America, in the Berkshires, which is the westernmost part of the state, in the Berkshire Hills. And these hills are part of the Appalachian mountain chain, one of the oldest mountain ranges on Earth. And it's very hilly, but these hills used to be gigantic mountains, and they're just so old that they've been ground down to these beautiful and soft hills that are so distinctive to this land. And I live here with my wife and my children. My kids I've got a stepdaughter in college, and my two younger ones are in 5th and 7th grade. And I work at Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, which is a big yoga retreat center in the Berkshires. And back in 2018, I founded a school here called the Kripalu School of Mindful Outdoor Leadership. And through that program, I train people to become mindful outdoor guides. And to date, we've graduated close to 400 mindful outdoor guides who I've certified and are out there like all over the country, all over the world, helping people get connected with the land and heal nature deficit disorder and heal technology addiction and just make deep connections with the land. And so, yeah, for me, that's kind of what it's all about. I just love to try to create those kind of experiences where people can have an awe-inspiring experience out on the land. And, it's kind of like from those experiences that the real healing starts to happen for folks. And yeah, so that's me. Lots more I could say, but I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you have a history in yoga? Like, do you teach yoga or not? Have you practiced?
So I studied religion when I was an undergrad, long time ago now, and started to explore different yogic practices in my early 20s, and got into meditation, got into breath work. Yeah, I went kind of deep into all that esoteric spiritual stuff throughout all of my 20s and the beginning part of my 30s. And I was a wilderness counselor for at-risk youth down in the Carolinas for 3 years out of college. So I was way in the woods, all year, guiding trips and whatnot. But it was down there that I found Kripalu yoga. And yoga was like a way for me to, it actually helped me work through some of the stress and maybe a little bit of trauma from the stress of that job that I had working with the young people. And so I came up to Kripalu late 20s, and I became a yoga teacher. Yeah. And so for about 10 or 12 years, I taught yoga, and eventually ran the yoga school up at Kripalu. We have a yoga school, we have an Ayurveda school, now we have a yoga therapy school. So it was while I was running those schools that I had the idea for the Mindful Outdoor Leadership School. So yeah, I've got a background in yoga, mindfulness, and that does infuse kind of my approach, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually my background as well, I taught yoga. I'm kind of at the place where I'm switching and no longer being a teacher, but to me the two were so like they just go together when you dive into mindfulness on your mat and then you transition that into your life, and you go into these yoga shapes, or even so much of the root of the shapes are animals, or like
Yeah.
the breath of fire. You work with elements. They're so intertwined. And I remember when I was studying yoga in India, your yoga practice was always outside, and I loved that. Of course, there's a different climate to that, but I remember yeah, I mean, even in my journey, just both of those, nature connection and, my experience in the yoga community and those practices and teachings, they're so intertwined.
Definitely, definitely. It's interesting that yoga has become such a nature disconnected practice in the United States, and that was one of the things that I eventually just couldn't tolerate anymore. It was like I had to stop. I was like, get me out of these rooms with like I'm the only guy in the room, and it's we're inside all the time, and it's hot and stuffy. I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to a point where I guess I just grew out of it, and needed to be outside. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Mindful Outdoor Leadership School has been successful, is because I think I'm not alone. I think a lot of people are at that point where they just can't do it anymore. Maybe COVID also just kind of drove that point home, but a lot of folks were like, I just can't sit behind a desk. I can't sit in an office anymore and spend my whole life in these artificial environments. So yeah, as you said, yoga and Buddhism, and I mean all the spiritual traditions, like even Christianity, like Jesus went out for 40 days and nights into the wilderness, right? Before he started his ministry. It's like all these practices have their roots in people going out and getting close to the creator, getting close to prana, in the natural world, right? That's where all of the that's where the energy is, right? That's where it's the book of life. That's where it's the source text is to be found out there in nature. So yeah, that's awesome that you have that background too. It's amazing too when you start to do those types of practices that really hone your senses and help you be present in your body, that when you step outdoors, it can almost feel psychedelic to just be like out on the land. There's so much to experience and appreciate.
I wonder, maybe you just hadn't done yoga with goats and wine, and maybe that's what you were missing.
Maybe. Yeah. I still have yet to do goat yoga. I definitely dabbled with the wine back in the day for sure too. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but goat yoga sounds absolutely delightful. I mean,
The
how
missing
could
link.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
I
Yeah,
love
I
the
love brings the humor in.
yeah, you have to lighten it up. I love the idea of the mindfulness, like a guided mindfulness instructor for the outdoors. And just as you said it, it's like I could just feel, a million people are just screaming for that, because we can all get outdoors. And something I learned from one of my mentors early on was, and I was super guilty of this, is going out with just the purpose of completing a task of, here's the hike. It's either it's a line in and out, or it's a circle. Let's just get this circle done. And then
Right.
your entire purpose is going out there to complete a circuit. And sometimes in that time you're out there, you can just almost disconnect, where it's just like, if it's grueling or the weather's bad, you kind of just shut everything off. You're like, well, we just gotta, it's 12K and it's a long hike. So just, put your head down and keep moving. And then you're missing like the whole reason you're out there, and all the beauty and the little things you might not notice if you're just to stop and like take a deep breath.
Yeah. I know, it's so true. That's one of the problems I think with the way that I do it and the way that the school runs, is we don't get very far. It's like, yeah, it's hard to get the steps in when you're noticing your surroundings and moving slower. And but we just try to let folks know that, going into the experience, so that they know, like, hey, we're not going to go we may not get very far today. And just try to invite people into, it's just nice to, along with that, right? Like some folks, they have their AirPods in, they're listening to a podcast, they want to get their steps in for the day. And so the trail or the woods is like, it's kind of like their Peloton or something. It's like a vehicle for them to get steps, or, just like get outside, which is nothing wrong with that. But I think what folks find is that they realize how much they're missing, when they're just focused on the outcome, and they're just plowing through. And so I think it was David Sobel. He said, one transcendent experience in nature is worth 1,000 nature facts.
Definitely.
I love that. Right? It's like, just sometimes when we just sit still for 15 minutes, right, and do our sit spot or do our owl eyes, and I mean, that can be life-changing. You know, that can change people's lives, just that one experience. And that's like, that feels so good when I bring a group out, and I'm sure you've all experienced this as well, you know. And a lot of folks, they just don't ever do that. It's just not part of our culture, really, to just go out there and sit and just watch and notice. And gosh, there's just so much out there to notice. And so yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, one thing we've noticed is when people first show up to our experiences, oftentimes I do believe it's a protection mechanism in the body, where if you're coming from like a deep inner city, like so many sounds, noises, smells, so many people with, every person has their own energy field. So in some ways, I do believe that the body protects itself by shutting or tuning your senses down so that you can cope. I'm not saying it's healthy, but that there's a coping or this ability to be in that environment longer term. And then when they come into a space, just say you step outside, and then all of this external stimulus is lifted. It's almost this safety mechanism for the person to be like, oh, I can start tuning these senses up. Because I mean, I'll say for myself, if I go even downtown our city, like my senses, actually, we were in a situation the other day where I told Jeff, it's really hard for me because my brain is literally trying to pick up on everything, but there's so much that it's disorienting. So I almost have to do the opposite, where we go and I need to try and turn them down, because it's so much that I get this like influx, and then I become very overwhelmed.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, it's a hard transition when you spend a lot of time, in a natural environment. Your senses become attuned to that environment, and then to go into a situation where there's just so much sensory stimuli, and it like from the human world. And yeah, I think you're right. I think for folks coming from like the human world and then coming into the more than human world, it's like that in reverse. So it does take a little while to down regulate the nervous system and make those adjustments. And that's why, like, a lot of the time, when I'm guiding a mindful outdoor experience, we'll start off by telling the people a little story about the land that we're on, because they're up in their head. So I try to meet them there. So I'll tell them a story, give them a little history, maybe do a land acknowledgement, orient them. So it's like, okay, we're head to head, we're meeting in our brains. And then I start to do mindful movement with folks, and just like, getting them doing some sun breaths, just moving their bodies a little bit, beginning to notice their breath, and then gradually just noticing their breath, and then noticing a sense, maybe a sound, and then, maybe something that feels like a gift. And so I like to take like 10 or 15 minutes just to go through those steps, so that people are starting to get into their parasympathetic nervous system a little bit, and then we can go on the walk in the woods. And so they're a little bit more settled before we start walking. And I find that's really helpful, just to give folks that time to make the transition, because it is hard and it is abrupt to just go right from the car to like being mindful in the woods.
It's
Yeah.
incredible that, it's almost sad to think that we're at a point where, we have to instruct first ourselves to get to that point that you can guide someone else, to instruct them how to almost be in their body, in not just their body, but in their surroundings, and how that's not
Baseline.
how it's not taught, to us as children. And it's crazy, we get to harp on all the woes of the world, society, but yeah, like just to walk someone through like, okay, you're at 10 million hertz right now in your head. We need to get you down to like a nice low hum so you can interact with everything that's going on. Because like you said, like you might peel out of the car and be like, oh my God, that's Micah. Like I seen him on Instagram, and then they're also like, oh, what's that tree? I wonder where we're gonna go. I'm like, oh, I like this type of area. I wonder if they have Airbnb. And like you're so in there
Yeah.
that we really need a facilitator just to remind us, like, hey, yeah, like hear that bird chirping, or just listen to the leaves rustle with the wind. And it's like we have to be commanded to be reminded that like we can go from up here and just slowly bring it down.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, we're so domesticated at this point, like, all the statistics, like most folks are looking at one of these for 12 or 13 hours a day. And, they're spending 95% of their lives in a building. I think I wrote about this in Rewilding. I worked with a guy who was like a hardcore, yoga guy. Hadn't walked barefoot in the grass in 25 years. And then you see you see little children and like people will put a sneaker on a kid, right from the time they can walk. And then, they won't let them go barefoot in the grass. Like we had one of my son's friends when he was at a different school, like just was afraid to walk barefoot, on the grass. And we're pumping everybody with the fear of ticks and all this stuff. And so folks are, we are domestic. This is what rewilding's about, right? It's like but it's hardcore. I mean, these people are very domesticated, and so yeah, they do need, a lot of people really do need some kind of assistance in getting back into their natural habitat, because it's foreign, it's just so foreign to them.
So maybe this is a good time. What does rewilding mean for you? Because we actually, when we were first sharing what Finding Polaris was all about, I loved using the word rewilding, but actually most people have never heard of it before. The people who were being attracted to our work actually didn't know what rewilding was. So I'm curious, maybe you can just share, what does that word mean to you? And
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so I always say there's two kinds of rewilding. I think two main categories. There's like the rewilding of ecosystems, and then there's human rewilding. So the rewilding of ecosystems would be something like the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone, or setting aside parts of the ocean, to not fish so that stocks can replenish themselves. It has a lot to do with the ecosystem and helping the ecosystem get back to some kind of like a wild state. That's a fascinating subject. And you can talk about everything from like the folks who are trying to bring back the woolly mammoths this year over in Siberia, as under the umbrella of rewilding, to reintroducing beavers, right, who are part of like these keystone species that have a really profound impact on their ecosystem, right? Like when you remove a wolf or a beaver from an environment, there's like all these consequences of them not being there. There's like an imbalance, right? So that's just a brief sketch of ecosystem rewilding. Mostly what I talk about is human rewilding, and that's based on the idea that human beings today are domesticated, and that means we are of the house. Domestico is like Latin for the house, right? So we are of the house. We are creatures that pretty much are adapted to being in a building. And so modern life and the developed world has provided us with all of the things that we used to have to do for ourselves when we were hunter-gatherers or more agricultural. So we don't even have to really move anymore. Like we used to have to walk to like go do our chores or get the eggs or work on the farm or go hunt or set traps or gather. Well, now like we just have to get to the car maybe and get back, but we don't even really have to move as much because we've outsourced that to our vehicles or to electricity or to gasoline. We don't have to make our clothes. We get those from overseas. Our food all comes pre-packaged. So we are a lot like a domesticated cat or dog, in a way that like the domesticated dog doesn't have to do the things that the wolf has to do. right? The domesticated dog doesn't have a pack. It might be isolated. It lives in the house. It mates in captivity, or it can't even mate. It gets all of its food provided for it, so it doesn't hunt or gather its food anymore. It's become basically an animal that's adapted to a building. And that's us. For a lot of us today, in the United States and Canada, in a lot of countries that are more or less developed. We're not hunting, we're not farming, we're not moving that much, we're not getting outside very much, and we're also getting fed a lot of prepackaged and information too, that we're getting. So human rewilding then is, in a way, it's like a process of becoming feral, of remembering some ways that are in our ancestry that helped us stay connected to the more than human world, to our natural habitat. And so we know now, because of all the research that has been done through forest bathing and from environmental psychologists, that human beings tend to suffer when they're taken out of their natural habitat, and we tend to feel better and have physical and mental health outcomes that are positive when we are reintroduced into our natural habitat, right? It's like, duh.
Guys.
Who would why would we think that we would feel good, like being locked up in crates and eating processed food all the time and all that? But so for a lot of what I do is I kind of have taken mindfulness and helping people just sort of bring their awareness into the present moment as a way to help them get reconnected to that. And then I like to bring in things like, fox walking, like walking barefoot, earthing, doing sit spot, being outside, being still, observing our environment, birthing fire, learning about our environment, naturalist skills, foraging, bow and arrow, hunter-gatherer practices that are empowering, that are fun, that connect us with the land, that we can do with other people. A big practice for me in rewilding is council practice. Like an ancestral skill that's really important is being in community. I've heard you talk about this as well, like being in community, sitting around a fire, telling stories, listening. It's vital. It's isolation is I think one of the greatest tragedies of human domestication is our isolation.
Mm.
And our feeling that we don't have a purpose. I think that's devastating for folks to feel like, what's my purpose? I don't have, what can I contribute? Am I needed? And I think a lot of young people today, and a lot of people just feel like discarded, right? Because like they're not contributing to the group, or they don't feel like they are. And so that's rewilding to me.
I love the community piece and the counseling piece, because I think something that I think we have trouble is what are we? What do we offer? Like, are we skills people? Are we? And we hate to compartmentalize ourselves, and online, you see the flashy stuff, right? You're not going to see someone talk 20 minutes about why it's so important to have, say Micah lead a conversation amongst a group of men or young kids, because you need that, that person who might hold a conversation so that, it doesn't get pulled in one direction, or the crowd, like the craziness of the crowd starts to pull, like that's why we had chiefs and wise people. So, and just the communicating, having someone be able to lead the conversation, or having a wise person that you turn to. And it gets so overlooked with the skill stuff, is like everyone wants to do the cool flashy friction fire, or shoot the bow, or hunt an animal, or set a trap, or make cordage or crafts. But it's like we tend to miss like almost the most human things, because like monkeys can make crafts, animals can craft things, they can do all these different neat skills, but the one thing we have is our ability to communicate our ideas and relate to others. And I think that's such an important piece that you mentioned.
Yeah. I think probably counsel practice to me is the most important skill that the world needs at this moment. Of all the, more than archery. As much as I love archery, I think listening is the most needed ancestral skill right now.
Mm.
Well, I remember when I was at teaching drum, this was kind of one of the build up, my kind of final big intense outdoor immersion. And I was out for 2 months living in a wigwam with our group. Our circle was about 15 to 20 people. Some people left for their own reasons, and no connection to, the outside world. And there was conflict. Like, that was very real. Not everyone loved or liked every single person in the group. When you're in intense situations like that, to stay present and grounded and in a state of love for every person, there's high stress, like when the cold temperatures came in, like a high stress environment, all of our fires and meals were cooked over friction fire, and there were things that had to get done and people got sick and all these things. And it was truly amazing to see, like, at the end of the day, our circle is only as strong as we can all be together. And one of the biggest teachings from there, and was someone said, like, you don't have to like everyone, but you have to love everyone. And this is your circle. There's no like, you can't stay in a situation like, you were with the people, and I loved it. I also like thrive like that. Some people really, I guess it depends on the personality, but some people don't like that because they're forced to communicate clearly. They're forced to engage in conversation that maybe normally they can just avoid the person in their life and they don't actually have to deal with conflict. But I say conflict, it's not a negative thing, but I would love to hear more about what does counsel mean to you? How do you hold counsel in your life? Like, what does that actually look like?
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's many ways and approaches, I'm sure. We're at Kripalu, we've always had share circles. And so I got trained in leading a share circle. And then I read the book, The Way of Counsel, which is a wonderful book. And it's a method that was developed out in Ojai and California. And I sort of just combined the two. In the Way of Counsel method, one person speaks at a time. You have a talking piece. The person holding the talking piece is the one person with the authority to speak. So as Epictetus said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. And the invitation is to speak from your heart. So not from up here, not from the stories that we've already got scripted, but to speak from what would it feel like to have your speech come from a different place than up here, like from here. So that's a lifelong practice. So that's the first one. The second one is to listen from your heart, or listen with your whole being. So, the invitation is that we're not here to judge each other or fix each other or give each other advice or anything like that. We're here to hold space for each other as humans. So speak and listen from the heart. Be spontaneous is not to script what you're going to say. Like, while the talking piece is going around, you're not writing your script. You're present for the people who are speaking. And then to be of lean expression, which is just be mindful of who's in the circle, and it's got to get all the way around and not to take up too much time with whatever you're going to share. So that's the general approach. And, I've used it for the last, almost 20 years. In every retreat I lead, every program, every training. It's an incredible skill. And when you're forming a community and you use it from right away to introduce everyone, and then you come back into it to integrate an experience, people get into the habit of being in council. And then what'll happen is sometimes a conflict will arise, And rather than going into the normal way that folks might approach that, which is trying to win, you if you're in the habit, you drop back into counsel. And that helps to, it just helps to navigate the conflict. Because when one person's speaking at a time and there's that container for the experience that holds the container, what ends up happening is multiple viewpoints get expressed, people feel heard, and often you arrive at like a collective experience or a collective perspective. And most of the time folks don't need to win, they just want to be understood, they want to feel like people hear them. So that's kind of the approach that I use. And I also use it at home. Like I use it here with the kids and with my wife at home. Sometimes it's just a remote control that's going around or a stuffed animal. But it's pretty neat to see the kids embrace it and just have that skill set of being able to listen to someone else, Yeah.
Have you ever had any experience with the term radical honesty?
Yeah, I've heard that tossed around before.
Yeah,
Yep.
I had some young mentors who I worked with years ago, and they brought that concept into my life, and that was really, really powerful. The author of the book Radical Honesty, the quote that he said that always stuck with me was they asked him like, oh, did you get a lot of girls with this technique? He said, like, I got slapped. What did he say? I got more girls than I got slapped. So kind of just saying like, you're gonna offend some people, or they're not gonna like what you say with this like upfront honesty, but you're gonna get the people who appreciate it and like kind of reciprocate. But yeah, I was just curious if you've run into that.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah. Yeah, we used to have a virtue at Kripalu years ago that was authenticity, authenticity. And it's interesting, like radical honesty, authenticity, it's powerful stuff. And I really believe in honesty. I believe in truth. But what sometimes happens is when you're starting to work with these concepts of authenticity, you're experimenting, and sometimes you might say, I'm being authentic right now, but then after being authentic, you're like, maybe that wasn't the best move to be so authentic in that moment.
Was it authentic?
Did I need to be that honest in that moment? Or, so I think as we grow, we learn how to, work with those very powerful concepts.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you definitely bite your tongue a couple times. You're like, oh, like, is that really what I wanted to say? Or just like bubbles up, and like you said, like in a circle where one person's talking, it's easy for something to bubble up, and it gives you like a minute to think about it, and it goes back down because you're like, no, actually, that's kind of fucking stupid. Like I don't need to say that. But sometimes you're in a heated conversation. It's like, oh, I'm gonna be radically honest right now. It's just I'm just being radically egotistic and selfish with what I'm gonna say next.
Yeah. Listen, it's not easy being a human being. It's a journey, and we break a lot of plates. As we go. That's how we learn.
There's no instruction manual.
I'm trying to. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true.
But to reflect back what you said, I think most people in my experience, they actually really want to be heard or just witnessed. They just want someone to see them in whatever the state they're in, whether it's fear or working through something, or also just joy and happiness. Like, most people don't want to experience these emotions or like rites of passage. They don't want to do any of this alone, so they go into these circles or these experiences where they can be in a group where people are actually showing up in their full presence. So you can be with someone and fully support them. And, you know, sometimes I feel like all I'm doing is just reflecting back and putting, you know, the power or their center, if it's off, it's just like bringing them back to their own truth. And you just hold space and you're just there for them. And sometimes it's easy to overthink, but it's so simple. It's so simple and so connective and healing, truly.
Well, I think in our culture, we haven't normalized it yet for people to just, it's like, I don't know if our language plus our social structure has made it able to be like, to just, oh, Micah, I'm struggling with this, and like it's super hard. And it's like we don't have that, and some stuff seems silly, like when we host stuff, and you know, you're just witnessing and reflecting back to them, like Dariya said, to be noticed. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, like what you're going through or what you went through, that sucked. But it's like we don't want to talk about it, or it's like impolite to talk about it with your friends or your family. Or, you know, some people just don't have that person they feel is like an open conduit with a soft hands and a big heart to like, hey, like just, you know, let it all out. You'll get a big hug at the end. We'll talk it back and forth. And then they're just like, oh, I just needed to get it off my chest. And it's such a little thing on the outside after it's all kind of spilled out. But we don't have the, almost like you said, like you don't have that circle to kind of, it's not structured in our everyday life or even in our friendships and families to be acceptable, to be like, hey, I'm struggling with XYZ, whether it's health, emotional, relationship stuff, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Clearly. I mean, it's interesting, like in Western culture, we have, going all the way back to the Greeks, we've got this like debate, right? And like we have a political structure, and it's based on kind of a battle of ideas, and I think that's kind of still the way it is, in a lot of circles. Like that's how, and I'm not opposed to that. Like I think like that there's a maybe a place for that, where we get ideas out, we all throw our ideas out, we try to poke holes in each other's ideas, and I think that's cool. But it's like that's not the way for everything. Like we also need counsel, because there comes a time when it's like that all breaks down, and then if everybody's just trying to win, then you're not going to get necessarily at wisdom, right? You might like get people over to your side and move something forward politically, but as I think we can see that's not enough. Like we need something else too. And I think that's where counsel comes in, because we have to reflect and see if like, well, is what I'm saying like better than what you're saying, or is what I'm saying wise? Like, does it really make sense? I think we have to have that ability to kind of step out of ourselves and be open to the possibility that we might be wrong, or that somebody else's perspective might add to our own. And counsel is great for that, because you have to listen. Again, it's like 90% of the time in counsel, you're just listening. And that's good. I think, again, I feel like of all the skills, like that's the one we got to pull out of our quiver right now. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, the Western taboo of, like, don't cause trouble, don't make waves. It's like we need a societal cathartic release, because like you said, with, holding circles, I have a background of health conditions. And when, you're in a circle and several people can all relate as they hear similar stories, now you're not alone. You're not suffering in silence any longer. And it's like, wow, they like, someone could be watching this and look up to Micah, and Micah, you say something where they're like, oh my God, he's human. Like he's gone through the same thing as me. And now all of a sudden, like you've just come empowered, or you've just been uplifted. And I think that's such a huge piece. Is sometimes it's just, kind of, we're talking in circles here, but being heard, being noticed, having your big dirty dark thing that you've been like holding on to and compressing just pour out of you, and like just releasing it like a demon and just getting it out. Or seeing that other people have their demons that they're fighting with, and you might have experience with that. It might be like, oh my gosh, my dad was an alcoholic, and like, oh, it messed me up. And then when the circle's done, you could go up to that person and be like, oh my gosh, like your story was incredible, I suffered with something similar to that. Or like, oh, I don't know my mom, or my grandparents passed before I knew that. Like these little things that we might just brush off of our own like hero's journey and story could be the next stepping stone for someone else's hero's journey. And it's just like, yeah, it's such a huge thing to have that community, have the ability to share, and then also be the hand that helps someone up, or the hand that reaches out to be helped up.
Yeah, I see that a lot with men, in the men's work I do. So many guys feel so alone with their addictions and their wounds. And, we all sit around in a circle at night around the fire, pass the antler around, and man, it's like everybody's dealing with the same stuff, and it's one of the biggest outcomes of that work is, just there's a lot of men living very isolated existences right now. And I think that's another consequence of our domesticated modern lifestyle is, we don't even have the bowling leagues so much anymore, right? That was like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, these folks were getting together to bowl and stuff like that.
Elks Lodge or
yeah, right. Those fraternal organizations and or before that, just hunting season or hunting cabin or the Grange or an agricultural organization or church. And yeah, it's a real issue. Yeah,
the most connected and least connected time in all of human history.
Yeah, it was funny. It was Memorial Day here on Monday, and my daughter was doing gymnastics in a Memorial Day parade, and I got up early and drove to this real small town, a little ways away from where we live, and it was a very solemn Memorial Day gathering. They had the veterans of foreign wars, and they had the honor guard and the flag carriers, and it was a very small town, but everybody showed up. There must have been like 250 people there, and I could tell everybody was like from that town, just a little town in the country here in Western Mass, and veterans from Vietnam, and and it was really interesting to be there and to see the value of people in a physical location, people who had deep connections to that town, and to hear like one of the elders of the town speaking about the Korean War veteran who had just passed, and the World War II veteran who had recently passed, and to see an actual community. And it hit me because there's just such a scatter in today. And I have buddies that I keep in touch with just via the internet, and because of that I'm not making connections with the people in my town, and so there's like this artificiality that the technology sort of it kind of gives us a gift in a way, but there's like it's a double-edged sword. And I think that's the good news is it probably won't be here forever. So maybe we just enjoy it while it's up and running, because it's not going to be up forever. We're not going to be able to do this, forever. I'm sure you guys probably, we've just live in a world that, our world has seen so many starts and stops to advanced societies and civilizations. So I guess that's how I try to look at it now is like, okay, we got this technology for now, but it's not going to always be uninterrupted. We're going to have to, which is why it's so important that you guys are doing what you're doing. And, you're helping to keep these old ways alive, because we're going to go back to them at some point, and it's going to be the old ways that get us through the next thing that's going to happen. And that's what I believe and how I really see it.
Well, I love that you brought up that piece around community, because to be completely honest with you, when I went to wilderness awareness school and teaching drum, and you know, these are experiences where like community building is a pillar in their teachings. And there was part of me that, the truth is, there was part of me that was like, this isn't true community, actually. These are people gathering for a class or for an experience, and at the end of the day, like, these people, are they actually going to show up if something happens? And then at the end of the program, what happened? Everyone went back to their homes. And
Sure.
then, okay, yes, it is a form of community, but it's fleeting in some ways. It's not like the story you just shared of that small town, where like those ties of between those people, whether it was like food, or it could have been housing, commerce, babysitting, you know, and the generational impact, I can only imagine of the ties there. Those threads of community are so potent and equally as important. And that was, even when I was putting the name Finding Polaris Wilderness Community, there was a thought that came up, was like, oh, it's still not true community. It, in like long-term generational big picture community scale. And I still like the word community, but there's definitely something I'm still working with in that, because when I see where we're at now, we just had our first, you know, she's 8 months, and I see the impact of, wow, the community now, yes, we're not surrounded by wilderness skills, but the people in our city that we're working with, the ties are so mutually beneficial, and they're lasting longer than, you know, someone comes for a program and then they go home.
Yeah. That's one of the hard parts about leading trainings and stuff is, people do get really close, you know, and you can create those moments and people make connections. And sometimes those connections last, and, you know, some of them carry on. But I think, you know, hopefully the skills that you're teaching are like seeds that those people will, when they go home, they'll be able to create community, you know, in their place with the people that are actually there. That's good stuff. You know, that's really, really, hey, how did you guys get the name Finding Polaris? What's the story with that?
It's a long one. In short, I chose Finding Polaris because it's the finding piece it's an action, it's a verb, it's a journey. Like, there's movement to it. The Polaris being, you know, the center of this so-called universe, and it's a still point in the sky, and you know, it's a guiding star, and it always has been. And I mean, the sky is just in itself this like awe-inspiring, mysterious, there's unknown, there's beauty, there's all of that. And I think in short, that's kind of the idea, is that we're all on this journey home, which Polaris represents that so well in the natural world. And Jeff and I are both really big sky watchers, sky observers, questioners.
How was the Northern Lights up there?
You're gonna laugh, or
baby goes to bed at 8. We go to bed at 8, so
we missed it.
Oh my God. Well, you know,
next 20 years we're gonna get it.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, who knows? But we're gonna be in our solar maximum like for another 6 months at least. So you might have another shot at it. There's some big sunspots coming around the sun in the next couple of days. So we'll see.
I've seen it not on the virality that the internet got a few weeks ago, but like I've seen it from my home growing up here, usually in the like depth of winter, really close to like the solstice.
Okay.
It's usually when I've seen it, but it's pretty faint. Like, it's like you got to be looking up at the sky and okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah,
it's so funny. Just when that happened, I told Jeff, like, we both used to watch the sky every single night, and then we had a baby, and I go to bed so early. I tell Jeff, I don't even have the energy right now but you know, this is the moment of my life, and enjoying that process and connection with
Oh
with
yeah.
our, you know, building a family and what that takes. Well,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
that can.
I get it. I get it. Yeah, our kids are a little older now, but ooh, when they were little, I mean, we would get them in bed at like 7, and we'd be passed out by 9, you know, and enjoy it while it lasts, because you know they get bigger, and then they don't go to bed till like 11 now, and it's like,
Yeah.
Oh God.
it's brutal. Yeah.
Well, I would love to shift
Okay,
into.
well, before we shift gears, I just want to. It's funny enough because on the community piece, of all the people I would have expected, so I was taking some business courses online through this gentleman, and kind of become a business mentor with his online courses, and very successful in business. He had a background with permaculture and regenerative ag. That's kind of why I was attracted to him. He was the only business person who didn't seem scummy and like kind of gross, and lined up with my values. And funny enough, like one of his big tenets is um, social. So he has a structure that he builds his life on. And one is, how does he say it? It's wealth, health, wealth, love, and happiness. And that's how he structures his life. And one of the big things that he's a proponent for is either like monthly or weekly gatherings. And he says that's just like a staple of his life. And it was so funny because when it came up, it's like, oh wow, like we really need to do this. And he says, you know, host a party at your house at least once a month, and then make it like a thing where you're, you know, invite friends. But he also said, you know, tell your friends to invite a friend. So he says it, you know, works for meeting new possible business contacts, you know, making new friends. You might meet people in your city who are influential or have, you know, different connections. And he said, just keep, you know, make it a thing where it's your house once a month, and have these gatherings where people can come. You're the host. So people are kind of forced to chat with you and get to know you and stuff. And then he also says, you know, like open your house up once a week and just, you know, invite one friend over. And it was so interesting because it's like Dariya, when I met her, she was really good at the hiding in the woods piece. And I was kind of on my like head down journey. I was training MMA at the time with a athlete who was training for pro fighting. And so like I would go to work and I would go train, and my only social time was like work and the few guys at the gym. And it's very easy to just like put our head down and go. And then we hear that and we're like, oh wow, like we probably really should be a little more social and like carve out this time to build this community that we're always like, where are the people like us? Or like, you know, how are we gonna find these cool new people? And it's like, oh yeah, like okay, we gotta do the work.
Especially in person. It's not a Zoom call, it's not a text, it's not a phone call. It's like we're hanging out, you know, food, fire, something, we outside if the conditions, and it's so simple, but there's so it's almost undervalued that like let's get people in person together. It's so simple.
It's good. It's great. It's very, thanks for sharing that. I got to do better at that myself. Yep. Introvert. I'm just the introvert who hides all the time. So that's that's good. It's really good. I wrote it down, one party per month. Okay. I'll take that assignment.
That's so simple too, because we're both like, I would say workaholics slash like project makers. So it's just like easy to be like, no, like a million things to do. I can't like just get this done. And it's like, okay, yeah, like, and then next thing you know, like 8 months go by and you're like, I haven't talked to that one friend I really miss, you know, and then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Super important. Yep. Super important. I agree. Yeah.
Well, maybe I wanted to shift with just being who you are with your teachings, your skill, your embodiment, and how you translate that to your family dynamic and raising, in particular, raising your children and what that looks like.
Do you all sleep in the same cave?
Let's see here. Well,
it was a bunker.
Oh, bunker. Sorry.
Yeah.
Bunker.
Yeah, the rewilding bunker. So, I would say that when the kids were, when the kids were probably about 3 and 5 is when I realized that I needed to make a change in my life and my career. And that's when I started to really turn into rewilding and mindful nature connection and all this. So I think what happened was, what happened was the kids were in a public school, and what my wife and I both realized was that that wasn't a good fit for us. That having the kids be in that one size fits all machine learning situation, we knew it wasn't a good fit for the kids, and we knew it wasn't a good fit for us because we were going to start bumping into basically just a lot of the stuff that I had to spend all my 20s and 30s on learning in order to figure out who I really was. And so we took our kids out, and we actually found a Waldorf school in our area that is much more child-centered and allows the kids to be outside. There's no technology in the school, no tablets, no phones, no email. It's more art-based, it's more soul-based. And it's been a financial sacrifice for us to do that, but it's been the best thing for our family. And hopefully it's allowed our kids to, and anybody who's listening or watching, like, can't recommend the Waldorf programs highly enough. It's just a amazing curriculum based on the writings and the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner. And it's been a great fit for us. And for me, basically, it was about the kids having the opportunity to stay in touch with their inner essence, like their soul, and not have that cord be cut or dampened through public education. And so one of the big benefits has been delaying smartphone and internet and social media. So our kids are 11 and 13. They don't have phones. They don't have social media accounts. They're not on TikTok. They're not on any of that stuff. And I think, now with Jonathan Haidt's book coming out, Anxious Generation, I think more people are starting to realize just we got to, as parents, hold the line and protect our kids' innocence and help them have a connection with nature, growing up. So that's been big for us. My son's 13. We've got him signed up for a Sacred Fire rite of passage program, a 3-year rite of passage program with a great outfit down here in the Berkshires called Flying Deer Nature Center. And so that'll be like a men's development program with him, be many men involved, and over the course of 3 years. Took my kids out backpacking, hiking, camping, making fires, shooting bow and arrow, as much as I can. But to be honest, also, like, we got to go to Stop and Shop. We're driving around the kids to school. We're very normal people. We're not off the grid. We're just trying to integrate these things into our lives and still, like, figure out how to be in the world and make it day to day. So, it's my dream to transition out of this and to have a pump well and a wood stove and all these things. But it's, it's as you are experiencing yourself, it's when you have children, you bring them into the world, it's a lot of responsibility, and it's like you got to make sacrifices, and it's just, you do your best. You do your best. So that's a lot of talking. I hope I answered your question.
You were dreaming about having kids in 100-square-foot bunkie with poor insulation, no running water, no bathroom, no toilet, just a poop hole in the woods. No way to heat and cool our food indoors. Sleeping under a bug mesh, so we could manage to sleep with all our fellow mosquito friends that would make it into the bunkie during the day because it was too hot in the summer.
How long did that last for?
It was like, well, we were out there a year through all the seasons, but definitely while we were out there, it was like, like,
this doesn't work.
A hot shower is real nice, like real nice. And for all the amazing things, like, like having the stability of the home. And something we talked about was, without, people take on the lone wolf archetype, and it's not realistic. And we see a lot of our friends that we've made in similar situations where it's like, it doesn't make sense. It's not multi-generational. Like if you're out there with a grandparent, a parent, kids maybe, but like just the two of us out there, there's no support. We're washing our dishes in the lake. Just the day-to-day tasks alone could take up your whole day, let alone trying to raise a kid, teach them all this stuff.
Right.
And that's when it was like, yeah, we need to get a little bit closer to civilization. And reminiscing about, like, it was amazing, but also being like, wow, like I really miss just going to the gym and doing kickboxing or jujitsu, and where we were living, that wasn't available. And just little tiny things like that, like you said, just going to the store, it's it seems less, oh, that's not very spiritual or outdoorsy, Micah, but it's like, yeah, but you can raise your family in a way that's fruitful for everybody, and also give back. And that was a big piece for us, was how will we ever be able to give back and teach and share if we're just busy at the lake doing the dishes and the laundry?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah,
And then
and
oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, at the end of the pregnancy and with a newborn, I was so grateful for the comforts of this home and what that provided me with, and our family with. And
yep.
Yeah. And also, I do believe there's this piece of, now we can teach from a place of not being hypocrites. Like, I do feel like I lived that way. I had those experiences. Like, those are inside of me, and I walk with that. And now I'm living in a home with a dishwasher and a warm shower, and I can still teach those same principles and practices with the comforts of this place, so that I can actually offer more. Because I mean, you couldn't even really find me where I was before, So really, really big teachings there for me, for sure.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's you always have those skills in your back pocket. And I think that's, most folks aren't really interested in living long-term survival, right? Like, a lot of folks want to know that they could take care of themselves if they had to. They want to know that they have that relationship with the land. And we got nothing to prove here, right? We're just sharing. We're helping people connect with place. And it's hard living. It's hard living when you've slept on the ground for 3 years, or for a while. It's like, it's nice to sleep in a bed, and that's okay.
There's no Waldorf schools in the middle of the forest. That's. And it's a different experience if it's you and 50 of your closest, like, friends and family and loved ones. But, like, another thing we ran into in the remote area we were, like, it wasn't super remote. Like, it was a populated island, but an island almost probably the size of a lot of states, like the smaller ones, but 14,000 people all spread out. If you want your kid to do gymnastics, doesn't exist. You want your kids to do basketball, it's not there. Karate, maybe once a week. And so it's like all these things of, when we step back and thought about it, it's like, yeah, like access to a Waldorf school. We don't have that here. There's other, homeschool groups and different stuff, but it's like, yeah, these options, when you're all spread out, or you're all trying to live the off-grid lifestyle, something we seen was like, wow, we do it for us, or like, what about our kids? Because now they're involved in it. If we're just doing it for us, what are they getting out of it? If they don't have access to greater community and other children and activities and experiences, obviously, cell phone not being one of them, but yeah, can they join a group of other kids and maybe just play soccer? Or maybe they love bowling and they start the next men's bowling league, and bring it back. Like,
yeah, no, I hear you. We homeschooled our kids during COVID, and boy, did they want to get back to school after that year. They wanted to be with their friends and be out there in the world. And yeah, I get it.
I'm curious because one with the raising children piece, one thing that I would say we get like people will kind of rebuttal back most frequently to us is your children are going to rebel if you know don't give them the phone, if you make them eat whole foods and avoid super high fructose corn syrup, like people that's what people say back to us. And I'm curious, have you had that experience?
I mean, I think that our job as parents is to raise our kids, and you can choose to let the world raise them, or you can choose to let the government raise them. But I think at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to raise our kids. And I think I hear that too from people. But I think kids, I think you can go too far. I think there's definitely people who take it too far and are too strict. It's like I kind of like try like the 80-20 rule or the 70-30 rule. It's like, if you're eating whole foods 70% of the time, every now and then you can just whatever, like go to, just eat Subway or whatever, or like go to Tim Hortons right up in Canada. Like, it's like you can't be so tight with everything that your kids, you can't live that way. That's just like, it's no fun. You got to have fun and cut loose and let kids experience what's out there. But I think Jonathan Haidt said in his book, he said, we overprotect our kids in the real world and we underprotect them online.
No.
And I think a lot of folks who feel like, well, but it's hard because it is a collective action problem. If all your kids' friends have phones and they're the only one who doesn't, that really is hard. But like we've been through stuff like that before, and there've been times when everybody was doing something and we were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And sometimes you just got to hold the line, because if you know what's right inside as a parent, like to me, like those are things that keep us up at night when we know something's not right and we let it go, or we know something's not good for our child and we do it anyway. It's like sometimes you just gotta do the right thing,
Yeah. When Dariya was pregnant, we listened to a great book, might be a cool resource to check out, Boundless Parenting by Ben Greenfield.
Okay.
He's a health, wellness, and I guess like a athlete, personal trainer type. Does the health and wellness and mixes it with fitness.
Oh yeah, I know Ben. I followed Ben. Yep.
Yeah, so he put out a parenting book, and yeah, we listened to that through the pregnancy, and it was really cool because you read the pregnancy books, we're listening to all these audio books, and something I'd laugh with Dariya as she was getting ready for the birth is like, I'm like, the birth is only like, it's coming, it's gone. Like we got to deal with this thing for 20 years plus. So, it's like
easy for you to say.
You want to focus on the birth piece, or then like the early stages, and then like I think you said it, like the first like 2 weeks, you're like, no one tells you what to do now,
Seriously,
and it's like
so scary, isn't it?
His book was refreshing to have hearing
That's
other
great.
parents. So he basically interviews all these parents and gives them 21 questions that he crafts, and each parent or couple or family gives their answers, and they're all diverse families.
Mhm.
So it was interesting, like, oh yeah, like this is stuff we have to think about now. So in 10, 15 years when it comes up, it's not like oh boy, like now, okay, like emergency, let's figure it out now. So it was nice to get the hamster wheel going. And like the tech piece was a big piece as he addressed like the phone internet thing. But like a lot of very creative and very interesting takes on what certain families did or didn't do. And then regrets, or like, I would have changed this, or we're doing this and it's working great. And it's like, okay, awesome.
I mean, I was just gonna say the one thing I would emphasize, and I think I don't regret, is spending as much time as I possibly could with my kids, as a dad, just like clearing my weekends, clearing my nights, and just being there as much as possible, being with them as much as possible. Because it does go, I mean, people always say it does, like my kids are like, they're like middle school, it flies. And, and they're out of the house, it's, I think that's been one of the sad things about, again, like sort of domestication has been the breaking up of the family. And we see so many children who are growing up without parents, without seeing their parents, like babies in daycare, and everybody's working. And I think it's one of the great tragedies of modern time is, that breaking of those vital bonds between mothers and fathers and their children. And so, making the time, doing what you got to do to, as much as you can, be with your kids, because you'll never regret it. You'll never, ever regret that, ever. No one is ever going to be on their deathbed. Oh, I wish I had spent less time with my kids.
We don't want to talk to that person anyway.
Well, speaking of which, I'm gonna go see her. So thank you so much. I'm gonna step away, Micah. It was super nice to talk to you in real time.
You too,
I'll
Dariya.
let Jeff close it out.
All right.
Do you have any other questions for him you think about? No? Okay. Big crying baby. Okay. Well, I guess if you want to let people know where they can find you, where they can get your book, maybe if they want to book a retreat or they're interested in learning more.
Sure. I'm easy to find. My website is micahmortali.com. And my book, Rewilding, is available on Amazon for sure, and in many booksellers as well. It's published by Sounds True. And yeah, you go to my website, you'll see all my upcoming programs. I've got a lot of programs. Next up is Mindful Archery in July at Kripalu. And this fall, a whole bunch of mindful outdoor leadership programs, and also leading a rewilding summit at Kripalu in November, which is going to be a gathering of a lot of people in the rewilding space. So,
Nice.
And I'm on Instagram, Micah Rewilding.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna have to check out that summit. Maybe throw us some info about that. I'd love to check that out.
I will do that. Yeah, definitely, Jeff. Yeah, I'd love to have you guys come down for that.
Right on. Well, this has been so awesome. I loved every second of it. Okay, thanks, Micah. We'll just step out here. Boom.